All right, tell me your name and a good story.
My name is Bray. You never met me before. It's very exciting. I'm very camera shy. There's gonna be people that tune in for the first time and they're like, "Oh, that's cool. This guy's camera shy. He's in front of the camera," not realizing I've been doing this for fucking what 6 years now. I come from a town in South Texas, and there's usually hurricanes, stuff like that. Hurricane comes through one time and knocks over a street sign. And so one day, the water's rushing down, and I'm talking like a lot of water in our street. It was really good because the streets were like kind of lower than the houses, like it all kind of angles down. So the streets might get flooded, but the houses are fine. So we actually had a couple times we had a canoe. You could canoe or just kayak down the road, and there was no cars driving, so we're just sitting there paddling down the road. And but anyway, so the street sign gets knocked down. It's just like floating by our house. My dad goes over, just grabs it, and just decides to keep it. He still has it hung up in his man cave at their house here. So I had a friend who he's the longest friend I've known. He moved away like a couple hours away at that point. And so my new friend, I'll just call him Paul. It's not his name, but I'll just keep him nameless in case he doesn't want to be part of the story. So I told Paul, hey, we should go and get this sign for my buddy. He's like, well, what sign is it? I was like, well, he lived on the corner of a street, so I want to get that street sign. And because I had just seen street signs floating down because of the hurricane, I was like, I mean, that's probably not a big deal. They'd probably just replace it. Like, they replaced ours in like a day. I was like, probably have a storeroom full of them, so not a big deal. We go over, and we're trying, and so it's, you've got the pole, the stop sign, one street, and then the street sign that we want. So we're trying to get this one, and we're just trying to like pull it and rip it down and like bend it, and nothing's working. The whole thing, like, he's boosting me up, and I'm like yanking and pushing it back and yanking, and the sign's just moving, no problem. I don't know, it's supposed to withstand like heavy winds, right? So it's not budging. We think, well, why don't we go home, maybe get either a saw or like a rope, so that way we can either cut the sign around the tool or just pull it off. Okay, we'll go do that. We start driving home, and we're kind of thinking about maybe not doing that because, like, oh, this feels a little too cat burglary or something. Like, we'll just go to our friend's house and just hang out the rest of the night. Well, as we're headed over there, I get pulled over, and we're halfway across town, like nowhere near the street sign. So I assume, I'm like, oh, I must have been speeding, or my lights out or something. And the cop walks over. He's like, you guys, and he starts looking in the back of my truck. As he's walking up to it, as soon as he takes a flashlight, looks in the back window, I was like, oh, here we go. And I know why he's stopping us. And Paul still thinks that it was because of speeding or whatever. And Paul doesn't do good with cops. No situation with him. He's just a very nervous guy. The cops come up and he's like kind of nervous, but I knew most of the cops in the town just because it's a small town. They're nothing bad really happened then at that time. But this guy that walks up, he's new. I never seen him before. And I was like, oh. And so he immediately starts trying to like freak us out, psych us out, and be like, oh, we got a call that this description truck was trying to steal some street signs. Did you guys steal street signs? And I was like, no. I was like, you can check the truck. He was like, if I check the truck, not gonna be any more. I was like, no. And he said something. He's like, yeah, well, I drove by and the street sign's all messed up or whatever. I was like, but it's still there? And he was like, yeah, it's still there. I was like, then we didn't steal anything. He's like, well, what if you were trying to? I was like, I never said I was trying to. And just trying to kind of make it clear that we didn't take anything, so there's nothing they can do. He calls another car, which calls another car, which calls another car. So now there's 4 cop cars, 2 in front and 2 behind us, all walking around, all trying to like, kind of freak us out. And they say something. They asked me a question. I'm like, and my response was, oh no, I'm moving in a couple weeks. Like, you really think the best thing to do right now is steal federal property? And then it kind of clicks. It's like, that makes a lot. And granted, I was in like high school this time. It's kind of dumb. It's like that makes a lot of sense. It's the signs would be federal property, so you're defacing it, which is a big no-no, a felony, I think. And so immediately, so Paul hears that, sweating bullets, just awful, freaking out. So I had to turn and be like, the more you act guilty, the more they're going to think we are. Calm the hell down. And he did. He relaxed. But they came up and they said something like, look, here's what we're going to do. And they were trying to be like, good cop. They're like, what we're going to do is we're going to let y'all go. and you just need to go to Public Works tomorrow and tell them about this. And if they, you'll be at the mercy of their wrath. I was like, okay. So me and Paul do. But so they let us go. So we go to our friend's house, we're hanging out, and Paul's freaking out. He was like, oh God. So we get up right at 8 o'clock, which was pretty rare for us. And we go right to Public Works as soon as they open. They open, we're walking in the door. And the receptionist calls the two guys there. They walk over, and we introduce ourselves as Paul. Well, obviously not Paul, but Paul and Raiden. As soon as I say Raiden, as soon as I say my name, he goes, oh, like Mortal Kombat? And I went, oh, we're good. We're fine. This guy's cool. He knows we're going to be okay. So I told him that, and I mean, you have no clue if this is the real story or not. I said that we went to that street sign, and as a kid, I used to hop up on the street sign and kind of just sit on it with my buddy, which is true. So we were trying to do that last night, and I fell, and I grabbed the sign, and it kind of bent. I was like, but we were driving on our way over here, and it's completely fine. And I was like, but the cops thought we were trying to steal it, so they told us to come talk to you guys. They're like, well, I mean, if no harm, no foul, it's not a big deal. And that was it. And then they talked to us for like an hour, just shooting the shit, chatting. And I remember we walked out of there, and Paul was like, oh my God. I was like, what? And he was like, this cop scared the hell out of me for nothing. I was like, yeah, I know. They kind of do that. I was like, they want to see if you'll crack under the pressure or something. I was like, because if they pull up and they're kind of, leaning on us a bit, we just give them everything. I was like, then boom, they made an arrest or whatever. I was like, but we weren't doing anything wrong. Well, I guess it was. We didn't know it was something wrong. So, yeah, do not steal street signs. Even if it's got a cool name or it's your last name on it or whatever, don't do it. Not worth it. Found that out. We got a call that this subscription truck was trying to steal some street signs. Did you guys steal the street signs? And I was like, no. And we're just trying to like pull it and rip it down and like bend it and maybe get either a saw or like a rope.